Red Dog was disturbed, however. This was his seat, and everyone knew it. What was more, the whole seat was his, and not just a half of it. He traveled around as much as he wanted on the company buses, and he always had the seat behind the driver. It was emphatically his seat, and no one else's. He showed Nancy his teeth and growled again. Now everybody knew the habit of Red Dog, and now that Nancy is Nancy is sharing the seat, he is getting upset, and he is earlier he was giving a low growl. Now he is also displaying his teeth and growling again. "Well, aren't you a charmer?" she said. She's trying to butter him up. She's trying to be sweet to the dog. But she didn't budge. Like, she is going to give a good competition to the dog. The dog doesn't want her to sit, but she is going to make sure that she coaxes the dog into being nice and let him sit with her on the same seat. Red Dog could see that threats weren't doing any good, so he decided to push her off the seat. He turned around, stuck his nose under her thigh, and pushed. She was surprised by how strong he was, and she was almost tipped off. Behind her, the men began to laugh again, and she grew even more determined. "I'm not moving," she told the dog quietly. She's not being loud. She's talking to him very firmly, but in lower tones. "I'm not moving," she told the dog quietly, "so you'll just have to put up with me." The dog wasn't going to give in either, and he pushed Nancy until she only had one tiny bit of the seat. He felt that he had made his point and let her perch there, uncomfortable as she was. You see how rude the dog is behaving? But that is exactly how dogs and children are. They know how to get their way. Now it is day 2. The next day, Nancy got on the bus again, and there was Red Dog, sitting behind the driver's seat once more. Oh no, she thought, because once again the bus was full and all the men were waiting to see what was going to happen. The people in the office had told her about the dog after she had got into work the previous morning, and now she knew that this was the dog who traveled around as the fancy took him. Sometimes he traveled on the water truck, sometimes in company utes, sometimes in the giant train trucks. As he got to know more and more people, he began to take lifts in their private cars as well. You had to watch out for Red Dog when you were driving, because he never forgot a vehicle that he had had a lift in, remembering both the paintwork and the sound of the engine, and he would wait by the side of the road until one of them came along. Quite suddenly, he would run out in front of the car so that you had to screech to a halt and let him in. So you learn to watch out for him in the same way that you watch out for rock wallabies and wallaroos. Remember, wallabies and wallaroos are animals which are found in Australia. So this tells us that the story originally belongs to Australia. Red Dog always insisted on front seat, especially on the company buses, and that was that. There was no argument about it. Nancy sat down a little closer to Red Dog than she had yesterday, and he looked sideways at her, showing the whites of his teeth as if he were about to bite her. Instead, he got down, stuck his muzzle is the nose and mouth together, the frontal portion of the dog's face. Instead, he got down, stuck his muzzle under her thigh, and once more tried to push her off. Nancy was cautious of the sniggers of the men in the bus, and, mustering as much dignity as she could, she said, None of you's a gentleman, that's for sure." Now, what did she do? When she sat down with Red Dog, she did not sit gingerly like yesterday. She sat closer to the dog this time. And what did the dog do? He gave her a side glance and displayed once again his whites. oh sorry, showing the whites of his eye. He looked at her sideways so that she could see the whites of his eye, and he tried to pretend that he was about to bite her. But what did he do? Instead of biting, he got down and stuck his muzzle under her thigh and again tried to push her off. So when the men started sniggering, started scoffing at her, what did she do? She gathered up all her dignity, all her courage, and out loud she said, well, one thing is for sure, that none of you are men or gentlemen on this bus. Because had you been men, you would have either offered me a seat or you would have done something about the dog. But you are sitting like sissies in your seat, and you are not even offering me a seat like a gentlewoman should receive from a man. So you are all rudes, you are all broads. Red Dog seemed a little put out by this remark, and he sat up and pretended that there was no one else on his seat. If he couldn't move this obstinate woman, he would just have to treat her with the disdain that she deserved. Now, what did the Red Dog do after he heard this remark? He sat up. He pulled his chest out as if he was a little gentleman. He started ignoring her. He couldn't move that obstinate woman. He couldn't move that woman who was determined, who was full of herself. So what did he do? And he started ignoring her. Disdain ignored her, because according to the dog, that is what she deserved. He allowed her a little bit more of the seat. He let her have the seat this time, but still not all of it. Again, we have the next day. The next morning, this is now the